Hi, this is John from BetterDoneYourself.com. Today I want to make some beef jerky. Beef jerky is a super simple project to do. If you like beef jerky, you should be making it at home. It's really expensive to buy it in the grocery store, but if you make it at home, you can use really high quality meat. You can adjust the spiciness and the flavorings just the way you like it. Um, all you really need is a food dehydrator or an oven to dry it out in. So let's look at the process. First of all, you're going to want to start with some chuck roast or like a rump roast. This is about a 4-pound roast that I bought at the supermarket and popped in the freezer for about half an hour, 45 minutes. What I want to do is really stiffen it up, firm up this meat so that as I'm trying to get nice thin slices out of it, I'm able to better control the meat and not have it slipping around my board and squeezing out underneath the knife. So as you can see, this meat is fairly stiff, but it's not frozen solid. I can still cut through it quite easily. The routine is to trim the meat and take off all of the visible fat. You really don't want any fat in your beef jerky. The lean is good. It'll absorb the marinade. It'll dry nicely. It'll preserve nicely. The fat will go rancid very quickly. This piece has a couple of, just this one side that I can trim off here pretty easily. I can get rid of the bulk of it. But as you can see, this is a real lean cut. Nice thing about working with round roast or top roast is that there really isn't a lot of fat to contend with. The first cut is to get down to the width of your strips. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this through and I'll give myself a couple of slabs about an inch thick. That'll be the width of each of the slices of the finished product. When you dry it, sure, it shrinks a little bit, but mostly in thickness. The width is going to be pretty much consistent with what we do here. Once you have your inch-thick slabs, next cut is to cut the slices of beef jerky. Here we're going to cut off, basically like cutting bacon. We're just going to cut about 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch at the thickest. You really want to try to go a little bit to the thinner side because it just makes it easier for the pieces to dry out once you've got them in the dehydrator or in the oven, depending on how you're working this. As you can see, I'm cutting with the grain. This is counterintuitive if you're used to slicing meat or slicing steaks. Generally, when you cut up a piece of meat to eat, you're going to cut across the grain and try to limit the size of the strands of meat. For this application, I like to cut it with the grain. You really get a nicer consistency slicing along with the grain instead of slicing edgewise like you would a steak, or if you were slicing slices of roast beef where you want real thin slices of grain. Here I'm slicing with the grain and I'm getting long slices of grain, and the finished product ends up being gives it a nice better chew. Now we need to mix up the marinade. Sky's the limit here. What do you like? I'm using some mayploy here. This is a sweet chili sauce. You can find it in Asian markets. Worcestershire sauce, good amount. Put in what you like. Here's a bottle of some ginger steak marinade that my wife found at the supermarket. This will be delicious. I'll add a good amount of this. Put in some molasses for sweetness, using about a tablespoon or two here. Don't want to make it too sweet. Definitely get some salt into it. This is a full tablespoon of salt for flavor and for the antibacterial properties. This is a liquid smoke product. I picked this up at Williams-Sonoma. I've seen it in the grocery store. You can buy it on Amazon. You can Not real hard to find with a little bit of hunting. But short of putting my beef jerky in the smokehouse, I think it's just as easy and you get just the same flavor from using liquid smoke. Once you've got what you think is going to be a good marinade, stir this up good. Make sure that salt gets dissolved. You'll be able to hear the salt in the bowl as you're stirring. And once you've got all that salt dissolved, you know that you've got everything mixed together real well. Finally, mix the meat strips with the marinade. There's really no good way to do this. Pretty much just dive in there and get it mixed around best you can. What you're going to find is the meat strips tend to stick to one another, and you're going to want to really pick through and separate the meat strips and make sure that there's marinade in between all these slices of meat. So you're really going to want to spend a little bit of time and mixing through, turn the meat, make sure the strips are getting separated and that you're getting that sauce, getting that marinade down in between each one of the slices. Once you've got the marinade and the meat mixed together, get everything packed into a zip-top bag. This is a gallon size that I'm using here. Don't waste any of your marinade. This is going to go into the fridge for a couple of days at a minimum, about a week maximum. Once you've got everything in the bag, squeeze all the air out, seal the bag up, and stash this in the fridge. You want to at least give it overnight. I like to go a couple of days, a couple, 3 days probably. No more than a week, I wouldn't think. You really, this is raw meat. You don't want to have it sitting around in the fridge. Every so often when you think of it, pull the bag out of the fridge and just give it a quick massage. Get that marinade distributed around on the meat. Make sure, like I said, that marinade doesn't want to get between strips. You can see that one piece on the right there that didn't really get any marinade, but got enough. The other side is well sauced. Take all your strips and lay them out on your food dehydrator racks. Give yourself a little bit of airspace in between. Depending on how thick your marinade is, you might want to wipe a little bit of the marinade off. You don't want too thick of a sauce, too thick of a marinade on any of the strips. This ended up being a pretty liquidy marinade, so I'm not really having a big issue with a real syrupy coating on the pieces. Once you've got your drying racks covered with meat, load up the dehydrator. I'm going to let this run for about a couple hours at 100 degrees. I'll check it again in about 6 hours and see how they're doing. When you're evaluating how dry the beef jerky is, I like to give it a squeeze right near the edge. See how pliable the meat is. You can squeeze it and see if the meat squeezes out between your fingers or if it feels pretty stiff. You want to make sure you get almost all of the moisture out. If you get all the moisture out, it's going to be brittle, crumbly, horrible. You won't be able to eat it. It'll turn to dust. But this piece is definitely needs a couple more hours here. This piece has a lot of moisture left in it. The meat should be supple, not too much give. We definitely want to go another, probably about halfway done, I think, at this point. When the pieces are done, they should be nice and firm. Have a little bit of bend to them, but really shouldn't squish out in between. You'll be able to feel almost like a layer of wet meat in between the two outside layers of the dried jerky. once that middle moisture layer goes away, then you know you're done. After a while, I find that there's probably 10% of the beef jerky that still needs a couple more hours, so I'll go through and I'll sort the dry pieces from the not so dry pieces. I'll just make a single rack of those not so dry pieces and run them in the dehydrator for another 4 or 5 hours until they're dry too. But I don't want to run all of the meat in the dehydrator if there's just a couple of pieces that need a couple more hours. I'll pull those out and then let the thicker pieces run for a bit until everything's equally dry. When everything's dry, you can pack everything into a clean zip-top bag and stash this in your pantry. I didn't use a lot of salt. I didn't use a lot of sugar. There's no preservatives in any of this. So I'm going to keep mine in the freezer. Keeps a lot longer and I don't have to worry about spoilage.